What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss even more iOS 17 features and changes. We're going to discuss a potential new Apple Watch color, why demand is so low for the iPhone 15, how much a brand new iPod just sold for at auction, a crazy AirTag story, and much more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with everything going on in the world of Apple, hit that subscribe button down below and check out the Apple Den newsletter, also linked in the description below. All right, so let's start off with even more iOS 17 features and changes. I swear, my video on iOS 17 when it comes out is going to be like 3 hours long. Anyway, so we have the first change to talk about is inside of the Messages application. So one of the big new features in Messages is the transcription for the audio messages. As you can see right here, it shows what I said in text form, so I don't have to play it. But another new feature related to voice messages is something I just discovered, and that is if you tap on play right here, if you tap on the play button specifically and hold, you get this pop-up where you can play the voice message at different speeds. So you can play at 1x all the way up to 2x. So you can't slow it down, but you can speed up that voice message, which that is brand new in iOS 17, and it's only if you long press on the play button, not the actual message itself. But when you do tap and hold on the message itself, you do see the save to voice memos right there. So you can now save voice messages as voice memos. And something else I discovered while playing around with this feature is that once you play an audio message, if you lock your device, that audio message will continue to play. So that's a pretty cool little hidden feature in iOS 17, especially if somebody sends you like a really long voice message about their whole day or something. That's a good way to be able to continue listening to it even after you lock your device. Now, if we head into the Photos application, and if we go to a live photo and tap on the 3 dots up in the top right, you will notice that we have a brand new option here in iOS 17 for save as video. So the live photo, of course, if you tap and hold on it, it will play the animation, what happened before and a little bit after the shot, but now you can save that little clip as a video. So if I tap on save as video, it will save it, and now I just have that clip in my camera roll. Now, something else that I mentioned in last week's episode was about the moon phase in the true to life position in weather. And I wanted to explain and kind of show a better example of that since I kind of just mentioned it last week. So here is the moon in Vegas last night. So you can see it's over on the far right. This is in iOS 17 beta 4. It's over on the far right because that's what it is, true to life when you're actually in Vegas. But on beta 3, here's what it looked like. So it showed it all the way over here on the left. And that was just the default position for every city. No matter what city I put in on beta 3, it would always show the moon in the same spots. But now in beta 4, you will notice if you go through different cities, it will show that moon in different positions because it's true to life now. Also in the phone application, if you take a look at this 1844 number, they left me a voicemail, but now in beta 4, it does not show that voicemail in line in the recents tab anymore. So in betas 1 through 3, we were able to play the voicemail straight from recents, but now for whatever reason we can't do that anymore. We have to go to the voicemail tab and listen to the voicemail that way. So this is kind of going backwards in my opinion. I really like that change where you can play it inline and recents, but for whatever reason, that's now missing. Now, something else that I noticed on my Apple Watch Ultra here on watchOS 10 beta 4, and this could have been there on previous betas, but it's just something new that I noticed. My bedtime reminder, the information it includes here is longer. It's more than I remember on watchOS 9. So it shows my bedtime set, my battery, my wake up haptics, and also the edit wake up right there. I just felt like this little pop-up screen was longer than it was previously. But overall, this re-release of iOS 17 beta 4, which is the same as public beta 2, is pretty much exactly the same as the original beta 4. So if you're following me on Twitter, you know that Apple did re-release beta 4. I didn't make a video here on the channel because it's literally the exact same thing. So there's no point in repeating myself. But overall, it's been fine. I mean, I've seen a bunch of people say how certain things have been fixed or certain things have been broken going from beta 4 to the re-release of beta 4, but I don't really understand how that's possible because they're pretty much the exact same thing, just a different build number. But yeah, like I said, really not a ton of issues here on this 4th beta. All my widgets are loading every single time. No matter what widget I go to, you will notice that they are all loading just fine. For some reason, home is not there. Of course, right on cue when I say everything's running fine, something happens with the home. So I guess there are still issues with the home widget specifically, but music and weather and clock, all of those are loading just as they are intended to. You can see there, my home home widget is working in this one. So it may just be something to do with a smart stack. But I will say that I am still having issues in the messages application when it comes to the keyboard, especially when I was testing out this feature right here for the audio messages. A couple of times that I did an audio message and I was trying to play it back. One time my messages app crashed. The other time I was not able to play back my audio message. So those are both potential issues. And then also the keyboard issue. Some people are not seeing the keyboard and just random things like that. But really nothing major. I mean, I think I've maybe had one respring overall here in beta 4, the original beta 4 or the re-release. So really nothing to complain about in terms of the performance here on these latest iOS 17 betas. Now, when it comes to the battery life on beta 4, I do have my main device here, my iPhone 14 Pro, which historically, since I've had it, has not had the best battery life in general. But, beta 4, like I mentioned in my original, follow-up video last weekend, the battery life is finally improving. Like for the first time in iOS 17, the battery life has improved. Even if it's only by that much, we've still improved a little bit. So that is a good sign. I'm not saying battery life is good or definitely not great, but it's a small improvement over beta 3, and I'll take that. So you can see my last 10 days here. Nothing too crazy, not amazing battery life, but we are getting better, gradually getting better, and this gives me hope that we're going to have at least decent battery life by the time the iOS 17 releases to the public if we keep improving on this. And speaking about those future versions of iOS 17, let's talk about what to expect next, because we are getting close to a big change that's going to be happening with iOS 17, and that is weekly betas. So we are finally going to be switching to weekly betas soon. I would assume that it's after beta 5, which next week I would expect to see beta 5 of iOS 17. So the week of August 7th, we should be expecting to see iOS 17 beta 5. And also from here on out, we should see the public betas come within 24 to 48 hours instead of being multiple days apart like they were for the first two. So yeah, if we get iOS 17 beta 5 next week on the week of the 7th, we should see beta 6th on the week of the 14th, and so on and so forth until the RC and the final release of iOS 17, which will most likely be in the first half of September. All right, so now let's talk about some additional iOS related news before the main news section of this episode. And the first thing I want to talk about is screen time, because Apple has acknowledged that screen time is completely broken despite saying that they fixed it in 16.5. It was even in the release notes for that update, but the bug is still there and it still persists through iOS 17 beta 4. And the bug is where restrictions are lifted on devices in a family sharing group without being notified, like without the parent, for example, being notified of those restrictions being limited or I guess removed from their child's device. And then speaking of screen time, Chinese regulators have proposed a new rule that would limit the smartphone screen time of people under the age of 18 to a maximum of 2 hours per day. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's a good idea. I mean, that's going to reduce any type of smartphone or social media addiction for people over there, especially under the age of 18. So I don't know. I kind of like that idea. Also, this past week, Apple announced that the Apple Savings Account, which you can see right here, the high yield savings account, has just surpassed over $10 billion in deposits. Quite impressive. The Safari 17 beta is now available to download even if you are not running macOS Sonoma beta. So it's now its own package, and you could just download Safari 17 beta and try out the new features like the private browsing lock and different things like that. And if you're a fan of Apple TV Plus and all those great TV shows and movies, that is now being offered on Air Canada as in-flight Apple TV Plus. So you don't even have to be a subscriber to Apple TV Plus to access the library that Apple has over there. And this is kind of following in the footsteps of what American Airlines did in 2020, where they first started offering Apple TV Plus on their entertainment systems. So remember a couple of weeks ago when we talked about how Mark Gurman said there's going to be a big generative AI announcement in 2024? Well, according to Ming-Chi Kuo, that might not actually be happening. He said that the progress of Apple's generative AI is significantly behind its competitors, so I don't expect Apple to talk much about it on their earnings call, which we'll talk about in a moment. He said at present, there is no sign that Apple will integrate AI edge computing and hardware products in 2024. However, at Apple's Q3 earnings call, Tim Cook said that we've been doing research across a wide range of AI technologies, including generative AI high for years. We're going to continue investing and innovating and responsibly advancing our products with these technologies to help enrich people's lives. Obviously, we're investing a lot, and it's showing up in the R&D spending that you're looking at, which he's talking about the earnings report where we saw all of Apple's numbers for their fiscal Q3. And you can see those earnings numbers right here, which was not great. I mean, analysts didn't really expect great earnings, but these are not terrible. I did notice a pretty massive drop off in the iPad revenue here. You can see 20% down year over year, but services were up, which is their highest gross margin product. The services are, that's 8% up year over year. Mac revenue dropped 7% year over year, and we're expecting a continual drop for the Macs, probably at least until the M3 Macs come out. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And the first thing I want to talk about is iPhone 15 demand, because it seems like the demand is going to be lower than that of the iPhone 14. Here's what Ming-Chi Kuo recently said: unless the demand for the iPhone 15 is better than the market expectations after launch, most of the suppliers will face growth pressures in the second half of this year, as the demand for iPhone 15 is lower than that of the iPhone 14. And I find this pretty interesting, especially given the fact that we should be switching over to USB-C this year. I find that interesting that people aren't really excited about USB-C like I thought they would be. So we'll have to wait and see how that kind of unravels over the next couple of years. Speaking of the iPhone 15, we now have a potential date for Apple's fall event in September, where they're going to announce the iPhone 15. And of course, if we know that date, we can predict the day of pre-orders and the day of release, because Apple does the same thing every year. So here's what they said in a recent report. They said multiple sources told 9to5Mac that mobile carriers have been asking employees not to take days off on Wednesday, September 13th, due to a major smartphone announcement. So this doesn't completely confirm that the event is going to take place on the 13th, but it is kind of a good hint at that. So if this event is going to be on the 13th, which by the way, last year's event was held on a Wednesday. I know Apple used to do Monday and Tuesday events, but last year it was on a Wednesday. So, and the 13th is a Wednesday as well. So this does kind of line up with what Apple did last year. But anyways, if that is the case, if we do have the event on the 13th, we should see pre-orders on the 15th and then a launch on the following Friday on September 22nd. And you remember how we talked about the Pro models potentially getting delayed? Well, that might not actually be the case, because in Apple's Q3 earnings call, they did mention how they're expecting iPhone sales to accelerate in the current quarter, which is Q3, which ends in September. That means that they're expecting to have sales ramp up in September. Now, again, that's not complete proof of it either, but it does kind of indicate that Apple's not expecting major delays with even the iPhone 15 Pros. I think if anything, we're just going to see a shortage of the Pro models. Like, we're not going to see as many of them produced as quickly, and pre-orders are probably going to, get pushed back a lot if you're not one of the first ones to pre-order the Pros. And by the way, also at this event, we're most likely going to see the Apple Watch Series 9 and the second generation Apple Watch Ultra. And we just got a pretty crazy rumor that we could be seeing a new color for both. So for the Apple Watch Series 9, we're seeing that we might have a pink color. So there might be a pink color for the Apple Watch Series 9. And of course, we're going to have this dark gray kind of black color for the Apple Watch Ultra, which I'm not getting my hopes up for either one of those, but that is just one of the latest rumors. And as far as the Apple Watch Series 9 in general, we're expecting that to be basically unchanged, other than a performance boost from the new S9 chip, which will be a big improvement in performance and battery life over the Series 8. And looking a little bit further ahead to the iPhone 16 Pros, Ming-Chi Kuo is saying that the 16 Pros are going to get the stacked camera sensor design, just like the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus should be getting this year. So the 15 and 15 Plus should be getting the 48 megapixel camera, and they're going to get that stacked image sensor design, which is going to lead to improved light coming into those lenses. And then around the same time that we're going to get the iPhone 16 Pro, Ming-Chi Kuo is also predicting that we're going to see a second generation of AirTag. He said, "I believe spatial computing is a new ecosystem that Apple wants to build using Vision Pro as the core to integrate other devices, including AirTag 2. Now let's talk about that original iPod that just sold. And this one's a little bit different than other auctions that we've seen, because this came from Rally, which is a platform that lets investors buy shares in rare collectibles. So in 2021, they opened up ownership of this original iPod, and there were 500 shares at $5 a pop for for a total value of $25,000. But just a few days ago, somebody put in a buyout offer for $29,000. That's a 16% increase over the $25,000 that it was originally valued at, and 61% of the shareholders agreed for the buyout, and it sold for $29,000. And this original iPod was only $400 when it went on sale in 2001. Crazy, that's a 73x. So remember last week when we talked about that man who was saved after falling off of a 400-foot cliff because he had an iPhone 14 with crash detection and emergency SOS? Well, yeah, the same thing happened again this week. So this time a woman drove off a road in Oregon and crashed and was knocked unconscious. But since she had an iPhone 14 with crash detection and emergency SOS, when her phone detected that she crashed, it automatically called emergency SOS and she was able to be rescued. And when emergency services arrived, they noticed her car was about 30 feet below the ground. Pretty crazy stuff, and another reason why you should always have this feature turned on if you have an iPhone 14 or newer. And then finally, another crazy AirTag story. And this is another unique one because this has to do with a Philadelphia couple who was frustrated by thieves who stole 2 of their potted plants. And it's funny because they placed these AirTags in their plants after asking for advice on a Facebook group on how to prevent theft. So lo and behold, a couple of days later, he noticed the pot was missing and he pulled out his phone to see where it was located, and he found it roughly 1.5 miles away. So of course, like most people do, which is not fully advised, but he went down to where it was located at and was basically talking to some neighbors around there. And then he saw a man wheeling a cart full of plants down one of the streets. And then he heard the ping of his AirTag. So I guess he was pressing, find my AirTag, and he heard the pinging as this guy was pushing these plants down the road. And the lady said, honestly, it was such a quick interaction. We were like, thanks, bye. And then the person who stole it was like, I didn't steal it. And I was like, okay. And we just went on our way. So kind of a funny interaction. And I'm sure that's going to be a great story in that Facebook group because they were kind of against going overkill with trying to, figure out who's stealing these pots. But they found it thanks to the AirTag and thanks to that Facebook group. So just another random way of using AirTags to catch thieves. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, if you did, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe for more Apple videos just like this one, and check out the Apple Den newsletter for a lot of these stories that I cover even earlier than in these videos. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.